What's up, everyone? Welcome to my channel. Today was a very friggin' stressful but very educational day. And I titled this video, What Should I Eat Now? Because I dealt with three different women today with three separate issues. And excuse me, I refuse to become perclumped and give up. I just refuse. And here it is, 9 o'clock at night. The whole day has gone by, and I have figured out some very intricate and interesting details. Number one, a client this morning was I had her before. This was a follow up, and so we're going to go into client stories. And she's 70 years old. She lifted up her arms, and she had gnarly rashes all the way down. Now she's had a histamine, Freudian slip. She's had a history of eczema. So this is not completely foreign, but she had a severe flare up going on right now. And I asked her, did you deconstruct? Take split apart all your foods. Like, don't eat this food with that food, with this food, with that food. Separate the foods that you're eating and try things one at a time. And that also goes for your supplements. And she was like, And I said, remember, at the end of all my consultations, I expressed to everyone, you have to start taking notes. You have to deconstruct because you might be having a reaction to magnesium malate, or you might be having a reaction to TUTCA. She has severe histamine intolerance and has improved in some ways and has completely digressed in others. And I said, are you boiling your meat? And she said, yes, yes. Is that helping? Yes. I said, okay. Have you tried boiling your fat? She was like, no, I haven't tried that. I said, well, take your fat trimmings. I'm not talking about butter. Take your fat trimmings, like from lard or especially tallow, and boil them because you really want to kill the bacteria in the water in the boiling process. She's like, oh, that's a good idea. And I said, have you tried olive oil? For the short term. I know it's got salicylates in it. Just for the short term, right? Because we don't want her to starve. She's reacting to everything. She said, I tried it, a really good high quality, but it was burning as I was going down. So I asked her, burning. So pure, really good quality olive oil that doesn't have canola oil and other crap mixed in it, that has not oxidized, it's going to be a little sharp, right, on the tongue when you swallow. I said, okay, I want you to go right now, get a tablespoon, and swallow this olive oil. Then I want you to check your heart rate, right? So we got about 20 minutes left of this consultation. She took a tablespoon and she swallowed it. I said, how do you feel? She goes, well, it was a little sharp going down. It was burning. I said, burning as in spicy or burning as in histamine? She said, I don't know. I said, well, let's wait. So we continued the consultation. I said, how do you feel? She goes, I feel fine. I said, check your heart rate. She's like, it hasn't increased. I said, awesome. We're going in the right direction. Because a lot of my consultations, I'm troubleshooting. And I will literally be perclumped and scratching my head all day. Now, that was the first person. Second person was in my coaching group, right? I'm in my group, and this woman says, you told me, and she had a little attitude. And I was like, oh, Lord have mercy. She said, you said that fat could not make you insulin resistant. or yeah, she said that, yeah, that you couldn't be fat couldn't become insulin resistant from fat. I said, so far, no. I mean, there's always a chance, but so far, out of all the people that I've coached, no. She said, well, I'm a type 1.5 diabetic, and and she was very short. I feel so vindicated now. She said, well, Oh, by the way, the first one was amazing. She called me like the medical medium because I started calling things. She's like, "How do you know?" Because I know, like with the olive oil. So the second woman of the day, she's challenging me. She's like, "You said this." I said, "Okay," because I wasn't talking about that. I wasn't talking about my subject on my course was how there's the mind is so connected to the body. So when people are trying to figure out why they're having difficulties losing weight or dealing with their whatever issue that they have, it's not just following some diet, it's also understanding yourself, right? You the whole physical body, how you feel, how you think, how you move, everything that you've created in your past and how it can affect your body in the present time and also in future potential future affectations. So with that said, and so she just chimes in and she's typing this. I'm not talking to her. And I said, okay. She goes, I ate high fat and um she goes, it made me sick. I do better on high carb, low fat. I'm almost eating no fat, she said. And I'm doing a lot better. And when I ate fat, my glucose was in the three, four, 500s. Not 500, sorry, three, 400s. And now it's down. I was confused first because the way she was writing the numbers, but basically she said now it was down between 80 and 160 taking insulin. Okay. This is insulin driven. I said, okay. So you're wrong. And fat can make you insulin resistant. So I was just like, I tried to ask her a question. Do you have problems with your gallbladder? No. I did keto for 2 years and this is what ended up happening to my no, she didn't say 2 years. She goes, I did keto before. This is what happened to my blood sugar, and now I'm amazing. I said, okay, I don't know how long you did keto. I don't know how you did it. She goes, I did it strict. I go, strict doesn't mean anything. I don't know anyone who has done it strict. It's their perception of strict. You also have to include your entire life, how much sun you get, right? See how tan I am? Vitamin D, if you're getting your fat soluble vitamins, if you're regulating cortisol, if you have GLUT4 receptor development, which I mentioned, which is very interesting. I mentioned GLUT4 receptor in this live. Oh, being able to clear out glucose. So I was on to something, but like when somebody's texting you, writing so little information, and then you're trying to put all the puzzle pieces together, and then they're starting to give you attitude. And I was like, can we go live? So I tried to call her live. She won't answer. I was like, can we go live? Can we talk? Like, because she was basically saying, I'm wrong. I'm wrong. Stephanie's wrong. She's right. And eating fat destroys your body, makes you insulin resistant. Sounds kind of vegan y, don't it? So I'm like, but that doesn't make any sense. Can you tell me like more? Like, what was your, how long did you do keto for? What was your, I mean, I was trying to ask her all these things. And she's like, I go, you're not telling me enough. So there might be some things missing in why. It could be because you're taking insulin. That was a guess. That's not the reason why. I said, you're insulin dependent. You're taking insulin. So there's something going on. And I go, she goes, and I said, how many carbs are you eating? Because she's doing high carb, low fat. And she's on my page. I'm completely perclumped why she's trying to call me out. She joined the group. Then she's telling me how wrong I am and how I'm preaching the wrong information. And I said, well, how many carbs are you eating? She said, 600 carbs a day. That's a heart attack. She's like, but mind you, she's taking insulin. This is not a normal person who's just relying on their own pancreas. I said, how do you feel? She said, well, I'm hungry all the time. I go, well, that's not right. Why are you hungry all the time? Something wrong if you eating 600. She's like, well, I burn it real fast and then I'm hungry again. I go, When I used to eat carbs, I eat around like 170, 180, and I wasn't hungry all the time. I said, well, you're taking insulin to deal with the 600 grams of carbs a day. So something is going to go left with you eating 600 carbs a day. Didn't tell me how much insulin she was taking. Didn't tell me if she was using a pump or taking it on demand. I got no details. I just got I'm wrong. And so she sent me a video. We ended the stream and she sent me a video of a vegan. Didn't tell me what the video was about. She goes, when I tried to ask her more questions, she's like, that's all I got. And I was like, she's like, go do your research. And I'm like, I've never had anybody eat 600 carbs a day and be okay. Never. Nor have I had anybody had high blood sugar from fat. Never. You're the first. So you are my, she's like, go find a case study. I go, you're my case study. Do you want to interact more? She's like, no. Go watch this video. I said, okay. So I watched the video. And here this guy, he's got type 1 diabetes. She's type 1.5. He's type 1 diabetic. He's got alopecia areata, hypothyroidism, bunch of autoimmune disorders. So his story wasn't the same as hers. He went on a vegan diet and all of a sudden his blood sugar just dropped eating high carb. It wasn't like he was eating high fat. Okay? He was eating like olive oil. I mean, he was using olive oil as his fat, but not like he wasn't ketogenic or anything. He was just like standard American diet. And he went from that to a vegan diet, and all of a sudden he's amazing. I'm like watching this thing. Still hypothyroid, still has alopecia areata. Okay? His blood sugar is not as high, but he's taking insulin. So I go onto the interweb and look what I found. Let's pull it up. I feel so vindicated. Now, I have cited Dr. Cywes before because he was saying you don't need to eat high protein. But then he said some things and I was like, well, like I'm not into the fasting and, he doesn't look like the pillar of health. But let me tell you right now, he has some freaking golden, not even a nugget, like goose eggs of great information. And today's video is not about how healthy he looks or not. It's about what he's talking about that was exactly what I was feeling when it came to your hormones. Let's hit it. I know he's going to go very sciencey, my people, and it's going to be very confusing. And I'm going to try to explain what he's saying the best I can afterwards, because even I am still absorbing what he said. But let's get it, because a lot of people will now be afraid, or a lot of people are afraid of eating high fat because they think it's going to cause insulin resistance. What a joke. And she kept throwing the Randall cycle in my face, right? The Randall cycle. Don't you know about the Randall cycle? Real attitude-y in her writing. She didn't think so, but I did. Let's get to this brilliant video. The whole thing's 35 minutes long, so I try to take a little piece that would explain something she didn't understand. So let's get it.
Effects. So for what Philip Randall is assigning to not the functions of non-esterified fatty acids as causing glucose dysmetabolism is actually a glucagon function. And in a healthy, normal person, glucagon and insulin should operate inversely. So as glucagon levels go down, insulin goes up. And what causes that? High blood sugar. So when your blood sugar is high, insulin should be high to clear the sugar, to turn the sugar into fat, and to get it stored as glycogen. When insulin levels are low, glucagon should be high. But if you don't have insulin, type 1 diabetes, cortisol, growth hormone, if the insulin is low, glucagon is going to be functioning even when you're eating. So when a diabetic eats and they eat carbohydrates, there's no insulin to clear it. So glucagon is still functional. So under those conditions, it may seem that the non-esterified fatty acids are controlling glucose. The fact is, and this is what Philip Randall didn't know, that either in the absence of insulin or under a condition he was even unfamiliar with called type 2 diabetes, insulin resistance occurs. And why did he not know about insulin resistance? Because he did not know of the existence of two very important structures. He did not know of the existence of a hormone called glucagon. And he did not know of the existence of an energy-dependent insulin receptor called the GLUT4 receptor that in muscle cells allows sugar to enter the cells under the influence of insulin. See, folks, first simplistically, the GLUT4 receptor was only discovered in 1988. 1988. And the GLUT4 receptor occurs in two tissues. It occurs in muscle cells, striated muscle cells, heart cells, and muscle cells. And the GLUT4 receptor exists in adipose tissue to allow, under the influence of insulin, sugar to enter the cell. And if the GLUT4 receptor is broken, as it is in insulin resistance, then that pathway is screwed up. Philip Randall did not understand that. He did not have knowledge of that because he had no knowledge of the GLUT4. Now, credit to Philip Randall, he made the assumption, he made a beautiful assumption that there must be an abnormal regulation in certain people of glucose entry into the cell. So Philip Randall did something beautiful. He postulated, he actually intentionally stated that the three levels of damage are, number one, glucose entry across the membrane. So he talked about the GLUT4 receptor without ever knowing of its existence. He then also postulated that another rate-limiting step of this pathway, whether the mitochondria are using fat or sugar, is determined by the conversion of glucose to glucose 1-phosphate by the phosphofructokinase enzyme. And we know absolutely that that's true as well, that PFK enzyme is affected by ATP-AMP ratio. And if you can't trap the glucose as G61P, then the glucose can come and go. And then the other part that he didn't understand was the triaging towards glycogen versus the pyruvate lactate pathway. But he postulated, he speculated that those three mechanisms, that those three levels of obstruction were the problem. However, let's look at glucagon. What's the history of glucagon? Well, glucagon was first described in a pancreatic extract in 1922. So in 1922, a group of physicians written up by Kimball and Muslin, they extracted some pancreas, created this emulsification of pancreas. Remember, this is shortly after the molecule insulin was described. And what they found is that in diabetics, in type 1 diabetics, when they added this emulsion to a type 1 diabetic, and they didn't know what it was, just mush of pancreas, blood sugar went up. So glucagon was releasing that blood sugar and ketones went up. So they were able to isolate this hormone, something in the pancreas. In 1959, at Eli Lilly, they were able to isolate the molecule glucagon. So they were able to isolate the molecule glucagon from the pancreas by electrophoresis. So Eli Lilly, in their labs, isolated this in 1959. And after this, from 1959 to 1965, a guy by the name of Roger Unger was able to create a test for glucagon. So we could now test for glucagon, okay? But only in 1976, was a radioimmunoassay developed for glucagon. And only then, after 1976, were we able to understand and test what glucagon does. Folks, the Randall paper, Philip Randall wrote his paper in 1963. 1963. And some of the cool things that Randall wrote in his paper, in terms of glucagon, he wrote here, let me find it for you. It's really cool what he did. He said, moreover, there are several differences between the insulin insensitivity induced in muscle by fatty acids in these experiments and the insulin antagonism observed with albumin preparations by Valence, Owen, and Lilly, 1959. They are therefore unlikely to be the same. So here's the cool part. In the lab, Philip Randall took albumin and attached fatty acids to them without having the pancreatic emulsion available. When you have the pancreatic emulsion.
Okay, so let's get here. Let's get to this right here. Basically, there's two things that you need to be able see the fat cells. I mean, fat cells. I'm sorry. Our heart cells and our skeletal muscle cells can uptake fat. That's why being in ketosis is such a freaking badass thing. I mean, just watching this whole video beyond the discussion I had with the earlier person in my group, um, it's so awesome to hear how well your cells can uptake fatty acids, fat, and use it preferentially as energy over glucose, right? Because in nature, you wouldn't have all this sweet fruit and all this stuff. I did a video a couple of days ago about some of these gurus pushing the fruit thing now, where in nature we wouldn't have that. And we're trying to go down the pathway of being able to use fatty acids and ketones in your skeletal and heart muscles as energy through the Krebs cycle. Because glucose is not it is too high octane to use as energy without having the issues with pancreatic issues of glucose and having to manage how high your blood sugar can go on a bunch of fruit. So he's explaining that when you have a problem with eating fat and your blood sugar goes up like crazy high, it's because your glucagon is not working as a type 1 diabetic like it would in somebody who's a non-diabetic, right? Insulin takes you down, glucagon takes you up, right? And glucagon releases with fatty acids as well. But there's no synergistic balance. So all of a sudden, when you're eating fat, now, because glucagon isn't working with somebody, and not everybody, with some type 1 diabetics or type 1.5, or even type 2s, the blood sugars, the blood sugar begins to skyrocket because of glucagon not working. And then because you don't have enough GLUT4 receptor development in your muscle, your body's not equipped with dealing with all of this fat, because fat is such, your body can liberate, you can make ketones and you can liberate these ketones, but the GLUT4 receptors aren't taking them in because your insulin, not that they're not taking them in, because I am trying to understand what he's saying. You don't have enough GLUT4 receptor development, so I misspoke, but your glucagon is not working. Therefore, when you're eating fat, the fat just skyrockets, right? Not skyrockets. The fat is making it difficult to keep your blood sugar from going very high because you're not uptaking that fat within the skeletal muscle and using it. Therefore, your blood sugar is spiking really, really high on fat. It's not because fat makes you insulin resistant. It's because your glucagon isn't working properly. And when he said this, it was like ping, 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 ping. Freaking knew it. My intuition was right. So now this person, instead of fixing the glucagon and developing GLUT4 receptors sites, now she's eating high carb and starving to drop her blood sugar because she was reacting to the high fat because of not having a functioning glucagon. And now she's eating high carb, starving, and starting to have issues with that, right? Hypoglycemia, because she's dealing with her insulin and then eating these super high carbs and then hungry, which, dare I say, what's going on with her leptin. Very interesting. Wow. It's very interesting when people will challenge you, but you yourself don't have enough information because what she was experiencing is so rare. But then I found this with Dr. Sivis. So thank you, Dr. Sivis. Thank you for this great information. Absolutely beautiful. I will link this video and below, and you guys can watch it yourself. Basically, a bunch of vegans are trying to get people who are type 1 diabetic, which is insane because, this other guy I was watching, I'd have to go and pull up this video. This guy's going on and on like, oh my God, when you're a type 1 diabetic, they're always saying to drop your carbs and you slow burning carbohydrates and starches and la, 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 la. And I did that And then he had a high blood sugar reaction. This guy to this day doesn't understand he's got a glucagon issue, not a fat problem. So good job, Dr. Cybus. Absolutely brilliant. Freaking absolutely fantastic. Another golden nugget or goose egg. Thank you. Thank you for that. The third client was today who came from the world of fasting because she was following some woman called, what was her name? Another doctor who was telling her to fast. And I thought, oh no, does this woman not watch my videos? I'm so against fasting. And she was so confident in her fasting. I fast this and this fasting and that type of fasting and fasting. And she's trying to lose weight. And, she lost some weight. I'm like, did you do a DEXA scan? She's like, no. I was like, did you ever monitor your blood sugar on any of this? She's like, no. I was like, do you know if you lost muscle, water, fat? She's like, it's okay. Basically, when people try to protect their narrative, they'll say everything's great. But towards the end of the consultation, she said she had like no energy and that her hair stopped falling out. I was like, what? Her hair started falling out when she fixed her electrolytes, which y'all don't know this, but when you fast, your electrolytes can easily tank. And I started putting the puzzle pieces together and like explaining how fasting can tank your electrolytes, but also is she losing muscle? She had lost like 15 pounds or something. And I said, muscle, fat, water, which one? And then after a while of explaining how food is energy and it's tools that fix the car, it's not bad. I don't know why people feel, I'm like, she was like, things I started putting together was she would go to bed at like from 8:30 if she's tired up to 10, but then wake up at 4:30 ish. I said, well, what time do you actually get out of bed? She goes, 5:30. I said, so you could wake up around 4 and then get out of bed at 5:30. So you could be in bed for a whole hour. And I said, how do you feel? She goes, I feel great. And I said, if you're having a Dawn's phenomenon, you're having a glucose dump to wake you up in a positive way, cortisol to get your day going, then why wouldn't you be wanting to get out of bed at least after 10 minutes and feeling like you got ants in your pants if you feel great? So I learned that she wasn't feeling great. And I said, if it takes you an hour to get out of bed, you don't have enough cortisol in the morning. Cortisol might be inverted. And this fasting, and then I found out her hair was falling out. So I was like, okay, your hair's falling out because you're fasting. That's why your hair's falling out. But because people might lose weight on the scale, they're like, well, this doctor who said this was right. And she said that there's, that fasting, she's like, well, I'm not fasting now. And I'm like, well, fasting's so great. Why aren't you fasting now? She was like, because I fast in cycles. I said, but if it's so great, if you're going through autophagy, why don't you fast all the time? She said, well, and I said, because of gluconeogenesis? She goes, is that because of gluconeogenesis? And then I explained gluconeogenesis. And then towards the end, she goes, well, that's why I booked you as my coach, in a very serious tone. And I said, thank you for that. Thank you for having the confidence. And then towards the end, she said, I said, because, if you're used to fasting and you're eating like, she was eating very low fat and low everything. Because I wrote down what she was eating. I was like, this is like a low calorie diet, right? Don't you think this is low calorie? And I said, that can't be good for you over time if you might have thyroid symptoms. She goes, and I said, so if we put fat into your diet and you have not taken your blood sugar and your blood sugar is running high, you're going to store that fat. This is not the same as the last one with the type 1 diabetes. And I said, so what do you want to do? She's like, well, I'm not fasting now. I said, well, I'm not talking about fasting. What do you want me to do? Do you want to eat high fat? Do you want to try to get into ketosis? She goes, yeah. Awesome. Write everything down. Get a glucometer. Test your blood sugar and your ketones. Okay? I want you to test the foods that you eat. When we talked about fat, she said that she could only get up to 170 grams of fat, and I was pushing it. I said, if 170 grams of fat total for everything, meat, fat, and blah, blah, is pushing it for you, you have a gallbladder issue. Because you should be able to eat 400 grams of fat without even blinking and not feel full if your body and the digestion is working properly. Lipase, stomach acid, and bile salts. I said, maybe you've got a slight sludge issue because you had floating stool. It's puzzle pieces, right? So what should you eat now? Well, everybody's an individual. And I said that because it felt like these three women were like, well, what do I eat now? And it's not really about what you're eating now. It's about being patient and really trying to understand your journey with your health. I'm the kind of person, I will never give up. If I'm going through a problem, I will give myself self-love and I will say, girl, you're going to figure it out. It may take a day, it may take 10 years, but you will figure this out and don't you give up. And this is my message to you guys. A lot of you will listen to these doctors, gurus, naturopaths. They send this person down the wrong direction. That person gets incredibly confused. Then they start to believe what they're hearing without making sure, in fact, what they're making applicable to their life actually fits them or is the truth. Then people don't know what to eat. You have to start journaling everything. You need to check your heart rate. You need to check your blood sugar if you really want to know. You have to take notes. You can't forget not to take notes. You've got to separate your food, take this food, and try this for a couple days, 3 days, then rotate and write down what happens. Because I get a lot of people coming to me with a consultation. They do it kind of, I've got people who are even really persnickety about notes and leave out the most important thing, which is to try the food for a couple of days and deconstruct and then reconstruct. Not everybody can eat the same macros, the same protein amount, the same fat types. People keep asking me, how much protein do I eat? I go, well, talk to me. Book a consultation because I don't know until you talk to me. So with this woman, she made me work. She was like, fat gives you insulin resistance because the Randall cycle says so. And I was like, I'm sorry, I don't believe that. She's like, well, you do your research. And I did. Feels really good that I did. So I want to be confident with in my promoting of a ketogenic high fat carnivore or ketogenic diet or even low carb high fat, because this woman actually was doing low carb high fat and she was saying that it didn't work. Like, I'm doing low carb high fat, I'm going to do no fat and 600 grams of carbs. I was like, girlfriend, talk to me in a year or two and let me know how you're doing. 53 years old, that cannot be good. So everyone is different. It's the real message. You have to know yourself. I know that when I moved from Texas to Tennessee, I popped out of ketosis through pure cortisol pathway. And it took a long time to get back in because the cortisol was still running high. Even though I was throwing everything into the kitchen sink trying to get it down, I had to let things go in life. It's very important. Today, there's so many stressful things, and you got to let things go. It's like this young guy follows me on Instagram. He's like, I'm looking at and consuming all this information, and sometimes I'm like, oh my God. And I said, just let it go. I know the world's freaking done gone crazy, but you have to breathe, diaphragmatic breathe. You need to connect to Mama Earth. You have to learn how to let things go. And then you have to learn what your journey is about and stop just believing every little solution that you hear that worked for somebody else. That doesn't mean it's going to work for you. And that's why I do these videos. And I said to the woman today in my group, this is on my low carb high fat keto and carnivore course group. I said, my whole My whole everything is about be careful. To learn as much as you can as an individual. Learn, people. Don't just follow a trend because somebody said they did fantastic. That has nothing to do with you. You are on your own path. And I said to her, said to the woman today, my whole channel is about being careful. So I am not preaching for anybody to harm themselves. If you feel that you develop diabetes eating ketogenic diets, I'm just personally not going to believe that. But I will do the research. I didn't feel that I actually needed to, but it feels so good to be definitively, conclusively confirmed, because I said maybe something with the GLUT4 receptors because she's not uptaking ketones and fat into the cells. Blood sugar's just skyrocketing. She's not using those ketones as energy. She thought she was. But just because you think you are, that doesn't mean you are. And I still have never seen what she looks like. I don't know if she's lifting. I don't know anything to understand glucagon, insulin, exogenous insulin, and GLUT4 receptor site development, and all those things that Dr. Sivas was explaining in this video was along what I was feeling in terms of your hormones and taking insulin and GLUT4 receptor sites. And he put it together, something I was thinking, must be this. Thank you everyone for watching my 36-minute video. Please learn as much as possible and stop following doctors who don't do enough research like Dr. Sivas on many of the subjects, although I'm not going to be for the fasting. Forget about that one. Not with the damage. It's just because people are so metabolically damaged today, but he and I really are aligned in a lot of different ways. And he just had he's just a couple videos I've watched have really impressed me. So I'll link that video below, and you can go and check him out and subscribe to what he's doing, because he's got some smart stuff to say. Other than that, comment below, share this content. I'm putting together the challenge. I'm putting a float chart together, and be patient. I know I keep talking about it, but be patient. It's coming. Energy. And you can go to my Instagram if you want to follow me there at Stephanie Ketogenic. Sign up for a consultation if you need help with me figuring out what's going on. And life is good. Life is freaking weird sometimes, but life is really good. And life gives you challenges. You just got to be up for it. And I am. Don't give up. And I'm out.